broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Good crack-a-noon to our friends on the East Coast. I am Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive, joined alongside me here in this virtual paradigm. I don't know which world we're in here. Maybe are we playing Half-Life or what's some other type of online game? But the thing we are going to talk about today is finding hidden ransomware and how to stop it. It's one of our knowledge series that, we've talked about ransomware in the past. We've talked about different threats. Now we're going to talk about some of the places that it sits in the least suspecting way and how to improve your security posture. Hopefully after coming out of this. But first, what we'll do, we'll meet Productive in 1 minute. Pete Greco is going to talk to us about ransomware and how it continues to evolve. What are the common kind of attack vectors? Where might your position be weaker? And what you ought to be thinking about doing about that. Ask questions along the way. If you raise your hand, we will get your answers to the questions straight away. But for now, let's meet Productive in 1 minute. Who is Productive Corporation? Thank you again for asking silently. Productive is a security company. We provide security solutions for mid-size companies. We have specialized expertise regarding technical licensing. We also do implementation. Test and optimize the things that we sell, and everything from doing a security assessment to Active Directory security services. We can do configuration assistance. We can help with your UTM or gateway installation. We also produce a lot of third-party content like this educational webinar that you are on right now. We put all of that on our productivecorp.com, Solving Security. There's a whole section of videos and white papers and content as well as our YouTube channel. The bottom line is we have all the resources to help you, whether that's implementation, assessment, licensing, optimization services. We're here to help at productivecorp.com. It goes to everybody. So you don't even need to tell us specifically why you need to help. You just type it, send it, it gets routed appropriately. Or old school, take out that rotary phone and dial us up. If you have a rotary corded phone, raise your hand and we'll send you something fun. So here we go. Pete Greco, our man with the plan, is going to talk to us about finding hidden ransomware. Pete is our VP of Sales and Technology, and he's worked with a lot of you guys and has worked with thousands of our customers on helping them to review their security posture, to understand the security posture, and help them with solutions that make their lives hopefully easier and make it more effective in the fight, the ongoing fight against staying secure and the bad guys. So let's give a warm virtual round of applause for Mr. Pete Greco. Pete?
Oh, I can hardly hear over the applause, Todd. Did you say my name?
Yeah, I know.
Hey, everybody.
Yes, it's enough. Okay, Pete, yes. Thank you.
You're absolutely. Yeah, please take your seats. Thank you so much, everybody, for hopping on with us today. We appreciate your time. We know it is limited. I will do my best to be brief. If you know me already, you're probably saying that's an impossibility, but I'm going to do my best. So hopefully nobody on this call has seen this screen or a screen similar to this on their machines. This is kind of one of the stereotypical encryption messages or ransomware messages that you would see if you're under attack. And this is the stuff that we want to avoid at all costs. And so how are we getting this, right? A lot of different things are going wrong if we see a machine has been ransomed or an environment has been ransomed. Right? Anti-spam took a pass. They allowed that thing into the end user's mailbox. The end user may have clicked on something. I saw some videos yesterday of some new attacks where simply opening the email can launch the attack. The end user doesn't even need to click on anything. And I was just sharing with Todd another thing that I'd seen recently, pretty clever, where over the email there actually is nothing to click on, but they insert a tiny graphic that just looks like a hair on your screen. And if you have a touch screen, when you go to flick that hair off your screen, which is really just a graphic, that's the click. Right? So the attackers are really trying to figure out how to get smarter and smarter and smarter.
So
Firewall doesn't, yeah.
So how does somebody get the email? I mean, so they see it in their preview pane and it's automatically, or you're double clicking it to open it, or what? How does that?
Yes, simply opening it. It's a vulnerability in Microsoft that has not been disclosed. So that's the only part that's been disclosed. It's a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows that allows the open email to effectively, and this was through a browser. The demonstration that I'd seen, they were using an Office 365 account in the browser.
Okay.
And when they opened the email, that established a hole for a command and control server to establish persistence and begin the attack.
Okay.
So pretty, and then the second part of that, and this is a little bit off topic, the second part of that is the attacker had 9 video boards in his machine where he could then start launching a myriad of attacks, and then ultimately was trying to take over the machine with an administrative password, guessing 10,000 passwords per second with those video cards. So they were estimating, that in under 2 minutes they would be able to guess, not only the 50,000 most commonly used passwords as identified by assimilating lists from the dark web of stolen passwords, but also a massive amount of standard dictionary hash dictionary guesses as well. And so anything that's even remotely basic, and by basic I mean under 12 characters, they're going to be able to crack with that kind of computing. But that's one machine. That's not even a server grade machine. It's like a gamer system with a lot of video boards on it. So pretty crazy there. That they're not sharing that vulnerability. They are sharing it with Microsoft to plug that, get that hole plugged. But they were not disclosing too many details on how to pull that off, because the thing that security professionals should be responsible with is they need to educate folks and be responsible, but not be a training ground for for future hackers. And sometimes you walk a fine line on doing that. So let's keep this rolling. If that traffic is going to a known command and control server to start some kind of a download dropper or ultimately deliver the ransomware payload, and your firewall doesn't see it, that's a fail. AV, knows a lot of stuff, is matching up a lot of signatures, but if you're getting a fileless ransomware attack, AV simply isn't going to see it. If your AV is offline during that attack, even a well-known ransomware like CryptoWall or CryptoLocker or Locky is going to be successful, right? And unpatched machines. A lot of these attacks are leveraging machines that have not been patched in years. We just recently talked about the resurgence of the RIG exploit kit. If you're not familiar with exploit kits, part of what they're doing is scanning machines, looking for vulnerabilities, and then launching attacks that exploit those vulnerabilities, some of which have been around for years, in order to gain control over the machine and do a lot of things, including launch ransomware. So patching goes a long way. Doesn't necessarily stop the attack. That machine can still be used to spread an attack, even though it may not fall victim to it. So it's not the only thing to do, but it's absolutely a critical area. So how do we get to the good side here, right? So updating that email security. If you have a great system, reviewing those config settings. Make sure that you've got that thing configured. And a great thing to do here that we don't see enough of our clients doing is reaching out periodically to do security reviews or configuration reviews of all their products, really. But for sure on email security, you know, a lot of times folks are getting new releases, they're getting new features, new updates that program can do for them, or new ways that program can take care of them. And if you're not getting those features turned on, a lot of times when new release items show up, they're not on automatically. Sometimes they are, but going in and reviewing that periodically, and it doesn't necessarily need to be quarterly. For sure, once a year, preferably twice a year. If you have the manpower to do it a little more frequently, absolutely. Reviewing things that got through. Why did they get through? How did this get through? This should have been blocked. Why didn't it get blocked? These are all great things to be doing. You definitely need some updated features, and if you don't have these, some of the things to be looking for, URL rewriting or link sandboxing. There's a few different names for this kind of category, but effectively what's happening there is those links are getting replaced with a link back to your email program, and that's probably getting sandboxed in the cloud. So when an end user does click on it, right, or if they do, that gets detonated in a sandbox to figure out what's going to happen when you click on this link. Is it going to be delivering, you know, a regular PDF attachment, or is this going to be trying to bring down some kind of malware or some kind of download dropper or this kind of thing? That's a huge thing. Sender reputation and sender blacklisting research. You want to make sure that your provider is doing a good job and has good resources to figure out who are the bad senders, how do they update those lists, what's the process for that happening, because you're really relying every single day that the next group of bad spammers out there are going to be identified and found and getting onto these real-time lists. Features for business email compromise. We see this on a lot of forwards that we get, so I know a lot of folks are using this, and we're using it as well. Just the banner at the top of your email. This is from the outside. When I get an email from Todd and it says this is from an outside sender, that's not an email from Todd. That's pretty easy to see, right? We're seeing a huge spike in attacks this year, and they're not new this year, but a huge spike in attacks from the CEO, the CFO, whatever. And my favorite one now is don't transfer the money. I'm getting on a plane. Go get some gift cards and give me the codes, right? That's even better than a wire transfer because they're even harder to track. And we've heard of a couple of folks that have fallen for that ruse. One of our business neighbors here shared with me a story of some guys working at a retail store who got the note to take the money out of the cash drawer and go buy gift cards and send them off to him before he gets off his plane. You know, and so this is the kind of stuff, if we can see pretty readily, at the very least, this mail is not from inside, we're going to at least start asking questions and training your folks to ask some questions. Now, not related to security, but what a lot of good email security programs are including now is mail continuity. So if your mail server goes down or if the cloud goes down, you're queuing up emails. A lot of the products that we have allow you to actually go in there and kind of use an emergency inbox. It's a great feature to have for sure. That really ups your game when it comes to uptime. But what you really got to be thinking about is, do I have the right features? Do I have them enabled? If I have them enabled and they're not working, you got to reach out to your vendor. And if you're a customer productive corporation, we want to hear from you right away so we can help you figure out how to get that stuff configured correctly and get the protection that is absolutely required on the front end. Now, the next thing here is we need our end users being participants in our security environments. And at the very least, what we don't want is for them to be actively working against us. And so one of the things that we can do, right, is get those banners on there so they can see pretty easily, this is from the outside. Now, just because you get an email from the outside, though, doesn't mean that you're not going to click on anything. And the worst thing that I see out there or that I hear is we tell our folks to not click on anything. And don't click on anything. Well, that doesn't work. We get tons of things every day that require us to click on it as a part of our job. We get forms that we need to fill out electronically. We get contracts that we need to click on to go out to DocuSign or whatever Adobe's sign deal is that we have to do. We download PDFs that have information that we need to help our clients do stuff, or we need to send them out to our clients and then they're going to download them. So simply telling folks to not click on anything, that doesn't fly. I've also seen the situation where IT departments are telling their end users, if you see things that you don't know, before you click, send it to us. And then they get so overwhelmed visually looking at stuff that they miss saying, don't click on this, or this is okay, or whatever, and ends up having a program. So providing that training and providing it consistently is key to help those end users, not only help you, but you're helping them in their lives outside of work as well, where they don't have a pro-grade mail security product in front of their email. You know, if they're getting Gmail or Yahoo or whatever other free mail type system, those folks are doing some stuff, but a lot of stuff is making it right into their inbox. And if they can avoid compromise at home, you're going to help them be more successful at work, because if they're having a lot of headaches in their home life, they're probably not going to be focused on their day job. But for sure, they're going to help you at the office if you can get that human intelligence, right, backing up your AI, as I put on there. Now, we talked to a lot of folks who are doing a homemade phishing training. They're building those emails themselves, right? They're sending them out. They're trying to collect data. Where these things fall down is consistency. So the ability to do it more than once or more than a couple of times a year. You got to have that consistency, and you got to hit them with a lot of different attacks. The other area where we see it falling down is really collecting the data and going back and retraining the folks that fail. And that's where really an off-the-shelf program can help you take that training to the next level. Creating campaigns that you can do monthly, collecting stats and reports on who's passing and who's not passing, and then for sure retraining the folks that that are failing. Ultimately getting down to the point where maybe someone actually gets an individual conversation. If they simply can't figure it out or don't understand what the point of this whole thing is, they might need a conversation with HR to help them understand you're causing harm to the organization. And if it continues, you can't be a part of the program. But the most important thing here is consistency and retraining the folks that are not getting it. Right. So how does our firewall help us? If you can block the command and control code that's coming across the firewall, block access to rogue websites, block malicious downloads, that goes a long way. It might not stop the issue on the endpoint, but it's going to block it from being fully successful. So the endpoint still needs to get clean. If you're in a situation where the endpoint has received an infection out on the road and they're trying to complete the attack once they get into the office, if we're blocking that, right, we're going to prevent that ransomware from coming across. We still need to go back and clean the endpoint. But at the firewall, we want to be sandboxing web traffic. We want to make sure we've got IPS, IDS on. The most common thing that we run into here is we turned it off because of performance. That means you didn't get a big enough box, right? And when you're looking at new machines, and this is something that we really try and get customers to think about, is you got to plan for growth. You got to get a machine that's a little bit oversized of what you have today, so you've got plans for those growth. And you got to think about taking advantage of some of these features. We hear a lot of folks say, hey, we're not going to use this, we're not going to use that. They get a box that's a little bit smaller. They recognize they need some of these additional protections, and when they turn them on, all of a sudden that box is too small. And so you got to be thinking about using some of these things right out of the gate. One of the best things that you can do is make sure that any external access to the internal network is handled through VPN rather than setting up public-facing RDP. RDP servers are under attack, and they're doing a lot of things there, right? Guessing passwords to get access. Once they're in, spreading ransomware is one of the key things, moving laterally throughout the environment, looking for other credentials, stealing credentials off of that device that they're ultimately going to use to try and compromise your Active Directory and own the entire environment. Once they do that, anything is possible, right? So we want to make sure we're taking advantage of and most firewalls, every firewall that we sell is going to have built-in VPN capability. So taking advantage of that VPN capability, it's one extra step for those end users, but it's a huge leap forward security-wise. Now, one of the things that I put on here,
I would reemphasize that. That is.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think, and I wish I could remember where I got this stat from, but I've seen it in more than one place, and I'm sure you can easily find it on the Google. Something like 200,000 RDP server logon credentials for sale on the dark web.
Yeah.
And they're cheap. They're cheap. It's like $10 each. Worst case scenario, or maybe best case scenario, they compromise that and put a little crypto mining on there to make some extra cash rather than spreading malware throughout your entire environment. And even that can get extremely expensive.
I know anecdotally we've even had, I mean, we have I've had a number of inquiries of folks that's when we get into it of how did they get compromised? It's RDP.
Yeah. Yeah. You're vulnerable there if you're making it public facing. And so that's one of the things that we don't do here. It's a simple click to establish the VPN. It's pretty easy to manage. Now, when you have a gajillion users, I can appreciate that starts getting a little bit more complex, but it really goes a long way security-wise. So scanning HTTPS traffic, that's easier said than done. It goes a long way if you can break open the HTTPS. It can cause some web timeouts and some other errors, so you have to have a firewall that really does a good job of it. You definitely have to make sure you've got the resources and the power to do it, and you may need some help getting it set up to avoid those errors. But again, it's another one of those things that goes a long way. The hackers are getting smarter and smarter about encrypting the attacks, using HTTPS so that you can't see the traffic. You don't know what's coming across that wire, and then they can sneak anything across. And if you're weak on the endpoint and you're weak at the firewall, they're going to have a successful attack. Last but not least, application visibility, being able to see on the firewall what kinds of applications and websites are being visited, so that you can start using application control a little bit different on the firewall. We're really talking about the application traffic versus on the endpoints. We're talking about the applications themselves. But if we can understand what applications are using that bandwidth, we can do a couple of things. We can start doing bandwidth shaping, right? Make sure we're giving priority to the things we use the most, like Salesforce.com or Dropbox or going out to other AWS or Azure hosted shadow IT services that we're subscribing to, right? Making sure that our Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever VoIP type protocols have capability, but then also blocking a lot of stuff that's not going to help the business. And it might not necessarily be bad, right? But it's not helping the organization. And if it's not helping the organization, let's minimize it or eliminate it across the board. Right, so Endpoint Detection had a pretty interesting conversation 2-3 weeks ago with a client who was saying, you know, they're reading 96% of attacks start via email. So do I think that it's going to a point where eventually the mail security products will be good enough that you won't need endpoint products? Well, no, because as soon as that is the case, that's where you're going to start seeing attacks coming in a myriad of different ways, or more focus on things like malvertising and clickbait as a way to get in there. And there's been a lot of stories of legitimate websites that have been compromised and hacked, and then get their ads delivering download droppers to start the attack. So that's bypassing right, mail altogether. So you're never going to be in a situation where perimeter defenses are such that you don't need something on the endpoint, because worst case scenario there, something comes in via a thumb drive, right, and now they control the whole network from the inside out. And it's very easy, or I shouldn't say it's very easy, but it's a lot easier if you can get an infected machine on the inside than to establish an attack, rather than trying to work your way in from the outside. If you can work your way out from the inside, it's a lot easier to get through. So some of the things that we still need here is signature detection. It's super fast. You know, anything that we already know about. I know what Ryak looks like now. I know what Locky looks like. I know what all the gajillion viruses that have already been created. And the fastest thing is when I see that, I'm just going to stop it right off the bat. Right? We want to reduce the attack surface, right, by eliminating access to every website that's out there. You know, you still got to have web access. There's a lot of stuff you got to do just to run your organization, right? But if we eliminate a lot of the stuff that doesn't help the business, whether we think it's objectionable or not, that's not the point, right? But it doesn't help the business. Let's eliminate it. We reduce that attack surface. Can't plug in any device known to man. Can't Bluetooth in using just any device, right? That reduces that attack surface. Eliminate the applications that can launch off of the machine, including some of the things that are built into Windows. If you're not familiar with living off the land attacks, check it out. A lot of the new attacks are trying to leverage systems built into Windows or built into the Mac operating system because they're not going to get detected by your AV because that's a product that's supposed to be there. And so they're not monitoring when that feature or that product or that system is doing something that it shouldn't do, right? We want to be able to scan in the memory because there's a lot of attacks that only reside in memory. Now, what they need to do there, which is pretty neat, is establish some persistence in the registry, because if you're a memory-based attack, rebooting cleans that off. So we got to make sure to get that restarted as soon as you reboot. Now, heuristics has been around a long time. I was just talking with Todd about this. You know, that's over 15 years old. Does that look like a virus? I think it's a virus. We still need that stuff. Host-based intrusion prevention, right? You got to have that on. Those are pretty basic features. If you're running a product that doesn't have that stuff, call us immediately. You need our help right now.
Yes.
Right?
Oh
Behavior monitoring is not brand new. It's newer. And here we're really similar to heuristics. We're looking at things that are trying to access other things, and we're saying, hey, that's not right. Outlook doesn't launch PowerShell. Let's try and get in the middle of that, right? Web control, even on servers. I should have put an exclamation point there. And I'm guilty of this. I got something not working on a server. I'm probably launching a browser on that server so that I can go figure out what's going on, especially if I'm in the server room. Now, if I'm at my desk and I'm RDPing into that thing, I'm going to look it up on my machine. But even there, it's not uncommon for me to copy that link onto the server so I can download an upgrade or a patch or a fix or a scanning tool or whatever the heck it might be. And I know everybody publicly is shaming me, but secretly a lot of you are on my same page and saying, yeah, I do that same thing. I've had enough people confess that I know I'm not alone, right? But if we get that web control even on the servers, again, that's helping us reduce our attack surface. And then the last thing that we run into a lot that you really got to take seriously is not protecting every machine. Nobody disputes protecting Windows machines, though I have talked to a lot of folks that don't do anything on their servers because they feel like every attack is coming through via a workstation. So if they're protecting the workstations, they don't need to protect the servers. That is not a good idea, right? But we talk to a lot of folks who feel like Macs are simply invulnerable, and it's not the case at all. And even if a Mac is invulnerable to a specific kind of an attack, that Mac could be harboring that attack and attacking the rest of your network, right? So protecting Mac and Linux with all the fervor that you're protecting your Windows machines is a must for the max amount of protection there. And now the next step that we really got to be thinking about, and this is for sure an area where we can help you, is Nextgen Detection. The problem remains, right, that we've got a lot of traditional viruses and these kinds of threats, a lot of old ransomware that's still making money and being effective in a lot of environments where they're not catching that they've got protection disabled and this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of new wave attacks. Look at Emotet, look at Purple Fox. These things are coming in a fileless mechanism, right? And AV simply cannot see them at all. And when you get to the point where you're able to launch PowerShell, Now you're going to run a script. There's nothing that's going to detect that that script is good or bad. So what we need to do there is be looking for the hacking techniques that allow that to happen and block those. We need to be able to get to a point where we're able to more easily get into an application whitelist type mode. We need to use machine learning and artificial intelligence so that the never before seen threats, we can start looking at those files and kind of figuring out, well, that wants to do this, that wants to do this. I know from my experience that when those things happen, it's a bad result, or when those things happen, it's a good result, and either allow or block that file or process from happening based on the likelihood of it being good or bad, right? EDR, if you're not familiar with the concept of EDR, what's really happening here, and this is a little bit different, right, from like AI and machine learning, EDR is the process of collecting all of the data in an unfiltered way. And then when we identify this file did something bad, threat hunting can allow you to go and search for that same file across your network, right? And go, oh, okay, I got the SHA-256. I looked it up on VirusTotal. 47 out of 50 said that was bad. It's probably bad. I'm going to hunt for it across my network. I found it on 2 other machines. I cleaned and blocked it. We're good to go. Well, what happens when, and this is one of the things that Purple Fox does, is when the key attack vectors generate brand new file IDs every single time you reboot and every single time they get downloaded and every single time they arrive on a new machine, that SHA-256 is not going to be a match anywhere, even though you might be fully affected across the board, right? EDR is looking at this, and it's not necessarily saying, show me all the SHA-256s. It's just saying, I've got all of this data. Here's what this file did. It accessed this, then it went here, then it copied over here, then it did this thing, then it launched an encryption. Show me across the environment where this kind of behavior exhibited. I don't care if it's the exact same file. If it did all of these things in the same order, then I'm going to know that that's the same kind of attack, and I'm going to be able to detect that and respond to it. And when I see it start to happen again in the future, I'm going to know that that's going to end up being a bad result, and I'm going to be able to block it before the attack happens. And by the way, we can do that in milliseconds, right? So EDR is really going to be that next step for being able to detect and respond to what's going on. So adding EDR and threat hunting to your environment goes a long way. Being able to figure out things that are trying to take advantage of exploits or vulnerabilities, launch PowerShell, use system tools to do corrupt things, do things like atom bombing, adding stuff into already running processes that's going to act in a malicious way. Huge ways to stop fileless malware. That's where you really need to be thinking about that next-gen detection. And if you haven't figured it out yet, we'd love to help you with that. Also, advanced tool sets, right? Now, EDR for a smaller environment might give you everything that you need, right, to prevent you from needing to go with the SIM. As you get into a larger organization, or if you just simply have a lot of assets out there, SIM can really help you out. Now, one of the things that we see a lot of folks taking a pass on that they should think seriously about with their SIM is adding in threat feeds, collecting threat intelligence from a lot of threat vendors is going to help you have some of that EDR type analysis that you haven't seen in your environment yet that you can now implement in so that you're blocking stuff that you haven't seen yet, but that's been seen around the US or around the globe, right? What SIM does great, especially if you have a great SIM, is being able to look at not just your endpoints, right, but also your firewalls, your switches, your printers even, anything that's connected to your network, and being able to correlate what's going on. Hey, this happened on the endpoint, and all by itself, that's not bad. But then I saw this other thing happen on the firewall, and all by itself, that's not bad. Or I've seen it happen on multiple endpoints, and now that I'm seeing it in more than one place, or I'm correlating this data, I can figure out, and contextualizing it, I can figure out that this is something bad that's happening, or the absence of data can also alert me that something bad is happening. And the easiest example of that is if I have to badge to get in the server room and it detects that I've not badged in, but now I'm on the console, well, that's a problem. What does that mean? Well, maybe I followed somebody in, but maybe that's a remote accessor from the outside. If we can get an alert on that, we can start investigating, right, or figure out what are those indicators of compromise earlier and earlier that can prevent a widespread infection. Active Directory monitoring. We just simply don't see enough folks being on top of AD. And part of it is it's a big job. And a lot of folks don't have somebody who is an AD expert on it. And if they do have an AD expert, their AD is probably so big that they still need some pro tools to help see what's going on and prevent attacks and compromise on Active Directory. And this can be as basic as new accounts getting created, right, and hidden in the AD. If someone controls your AD, they control the environment, right? Advanced password enforcement, getting those strong passwords in, and really being able to have mechanisms where you can ensure that the passwords are strong. So just simply saying it's got to be long is not good enough anymore. If they're using the company name, they're using their own name. So my password is 123 Greco 123. That can be dehashed quite easily. It would be hard for my wife to guess. It might be hard for you to see. I've met my password complexity requirements, but that thing can be reverse hashed pretty quickly. And that's where we got to make sure that not only are we creating long passwords, but truly strong passwords. And then, of course, MFA anywhere. And MFA has come a long way since the original RSA key fob days. They still make a solid product, but there's a lot of easy ways to get MFA started in your environment. And again, if you haven't guessed it, we'd love to talk with you about that. All right. That was a lot of stuff. Did I make the time? I'm a little over. Darn it.
You are over the time, but you were on a roll, so I decided to let the clock keep running. I mean, it's good stuff. So let's tie it up quickly because I appreciate, we kept you guys over. We try to keep it to 30 minutes or less, and we went over that, but I think this is great stuff. Think about this stuff. Think about these areas in your environment and what you're doing. The battle is real and it's ongoing. And if you want to chat with us, let's do it. Pete will probably be on that call, and he has tons of specific insight for your situation. So I think it's a great use of time. I want to thank you for coming today and thank Pete for a wonderful presentation. This will be up on our site if you want to share with a friend, or go to productivecorp.com, or Productive Content on YouTube, or just go to productivecorp.com, solving security, and you'll see all the different stuff that we do. But for now, I'm Todd Obert along with Pete Greco, wishing you a fantastic balance of your day and week, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.